All right. So agreement of sale is the topic for today's discussion. I say discussion, but I more appropriately mean explanation, where I will just be explaining to you what an agreement of sale is, and then I'll be handing over your task. And then we can have another next round of or the next meeting after this meeting where I can teach you how to make an agreement of sale. Now that is optional to attend, but this uh, that is for those people who don't know how to draft and who's the first time who are drafting. Please join that meeting. I will be teaching it to you like how I did for plain, right? I will be sharing a sample. I didn't have a sample of plain, but I do have a sample of agreement of sale. So it'll be easier for you to see what I mean and easier for me to explain it to you, right? Um, Agreement of sale. Now, agreement of sale is a crucial legal document that plays a pivotal role in real estate transactions in India. It serves as the foundation for the eventual sale of property, outlining the terms and conditions agreed upon by both the buyer and the seller. Now, agreement of sale is very different from a sale deed. Agreement of sale is the document which is made before the sale deed once both the parties are sure that, for example, I am a buyer and Udit is the seller. So once both of us are convinced that okay, Udit wants to sell his property and I want to buy the particular property, we enter into an agreement of sale. Now, an agreement of sale is like it's like a confirmation before the actual registration of the sale deed. So agreement of sale happens when both the parties are sure that they want to enter into an agreement of enter into a sale deed eventually. Now, agreement of sale is just made so that the buyer cannot move away from his liabilities and the seller cannot sell the property to someone else once an agreement of sale is made. So that is the main purpose of the agreement of sale. Now, there are certain key components which are involved in an agreement of sale. First is the parties involved. There are two parties, one is the buyer and one is the seller. Now the document, oh shit, I'm sorry, this is not a plain, that is a agreement of sale. My bad. What the document must identify who the parties are, their names, their addresses, their Aadhaar card numbers, just how in a plain you need to put all of those. In the same way, in the agreement of sale also, you need to put all of those. But there's a different format to an agreement of sale, and a plain is a document because you submit it to the court. It's a little more structured, it's a little more point wise, but an agreement of sale is a lot more paragraph based, right? So, and any other relevant details with regards to the parties are all mentioned in the agreement of sale. Then we have the property details. Now, accurate details of the property, like where it's bounded on, like you have a schedule. Now, a schedule is where you mention the property details, and in the property details, you mention the full address of the property. Then you mention what it is bound by on all four sides. Now, for example, this is a property, right? So you mentioned what is bound on in the north, bound on the south, bound on the east, and bound on the west, right? So that is something which you need to add in your agreement of sale. Then is consideration. How much money are you paying in advance? How much money are you going to pay at the time of registration of the agreement of sale into an absolute sale deed? All of that needs to be mentioned in the agreement of sale. Now the timeline is basically the flow of property. Like who was the original owner? How did it come to the next owner? How did it come to the next owner? How did it come to the person who's selling it to you? And then how it's going to come to you. Now that entire timeline needs to be mentioned in your agreement of sale and any other key milestones, like for example, if the property was converted from an agricultural property to a non-agricultural property, all of that with all the details, etc., needs to be mentioned in your agreement of sale. Agreement of sale is usually what gets converted into an absolute sale deed. Is just a little bit different here and there from the agreement of sale to absolute sale deed. I will be showing you those differences in the when we'll be having a discussion as to how to draft a particular agreement of sale. right? So next is your title of the property. Now the seller, whoever is selling the property, or the vendor who's selling the property, he needs to declare that they have clear, uninterrupted, illegal, not unlegal, legal possession and ownership over the particular property. Now that needs to be declared in your agreement of sale. It means that it is like a declaration. A declaration is nothing but that you're swearing that this property belongs to you and it's an undisturbed legal continuous possession from the time it has been transferred to you on a particular date, right? Then you have mode of transfer. Now, how the property will be transferred. Like for example, if it's going to be a sale deed, or if it's going to be a lease deed, etc. All of that needs to be specified in your agreement of sale. Now, if it is a movable property, on the other hand, you will be mentioning as to how it will be handed over to you. Like for example, let's say I have 1 lakh rupees worth of gold, how I will be delivering it to someone who's buying it from me. Like, for example, I will hand deliver it. That needs to be mentioned. I will courier it. That needs to be mentioned. I will be sending it through this person. That needs to be mentioned. Right? Then there is default or penalty clauses. Now, if there's default by either of the parties, in so if they do anything which goes against the agreement of sale, what happens then? That is your penalty clauses. Your default clauses are what are the things which you can do, which will, you know, ultimately lead to penalty. Now, there is something known as conditions precedent. Now, any conditions that must be fulfilled before the sale can be concluded, all of that needs to be mentioned. Like there are certain conditions like khata transfer, right? Some people want it done before the sale deed is registered, before the absolute sale deed is registered. Any approval from the BBMP, etc. Sorry, any approval from the government authorities, etc. All of that needs to be mentioned as conditions precedent. Then you have indemnity clauses. Now, the agreement typically contains clauses wherein the parties indemnify each other against losses arising due to breach of agreement. Again, penalty clauses, it's for specific defaults which occur in a plaint. Indemnity clauses, if the entire agreement is violated as a whole, what happens then, right? So all of that also needs to be mentioned. And then you have the importance of an agreement of sale. Now, the agreement of sale is a legally binding document providing protection to both the buyer and the seller. It is not as it is not as strong of a piece of evidence as a absolute sale deed is, but regardless, it is a strong evidence whereby if an agreement of sale is violated, if it's signed by both the parties and it has witnesses, it is a very, 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 very important and strong legal document. There is risk mitigation. It clearly defines the terms which help in reducing the risk of disputes, ensuring a smooth transaction process. Now, agreement of sale, right? Now, the agreement of sale is usually a document whereby the buyer is going away from the risk that, okay, this property that I want, but I don't have the enough funds for that will go away from my hand. And the seller, on the other hand, is um, guarded or is protected from the risk that, okay, this person is going to take the property which I am offering for sale. Now, there is something known as documentation of loans. Now, the agreement is often required by financial institutions as proof of the property transaction when applying for loans. Now, the buyer is applying for loans and they don't have sufficient funds. An agreement of sale is very important. So, if you present an agreement of sale, the bank or whoever is giving you the loan are sure that, okay, they are actually taking the loan for a house, purchasing a house to live, to, you know, pay all the rents and pay all the stamp duties, registration charges, etc. Then there are certain legal formalities. Now, the agreement of sale must be executed on stamp paper of requisite value, and the document needs to be registered uh, with the sub registrar of assurances. Now this document needs to be registered with the sub-registrar, and it also needs to have stamp paper. Nowadays, in some states, it's mandatory to use the e-stamp. Like for example, in Karnataka, now the stamp paper is not very widely available, and it's mandatory now from the court side that you need to use e-stamp. In some other states also it's mandatory, but it's not very commonly used. But in Karnataka, at least, as far as I know, as far as I have studied, e-stamp is the one which is um, more more value if the property is being transferred now, like from the period of 2023, 2022 or 2023, unsure onwards, you need to have the e-stamp. Then there is notarization. While it's not mandatory, notarizing the agreement adds to additional authenticity. Now, notarization, a notary is basically an individual who's a government employee. Now, the notary public is usually what we call it, a public notary. Um, the notary basically acts as a verifying agency. As much as they're supposed to be reading each and every page to and then sealing it, what happens is then there will be a lot of backlog in the notary also. So they trust the lawyer, they trust whoever is coming to them for notary. They place trust on them, and we place trust on the notary that they're actually registered. And if the notary is not registered, their notarized documents has no value. So you need to notarize, get every single page of the agreement of sale stamped, signed, and sealed by the notary. And once that is done, the agreement of sale has even more authority or even more value or even more authenticity. Then there's legal review. It is advisable for both parties to seek legal counsel to ensure the agreement um, complies with all the relevant laws and regulations. Now, there are certain states where there are certain land laws and certain property laws which are in place. And most states have their own land laws, if I'm not wrong. Now, just so that your agreement of sale is not like any other agreement, you need to have it vetted or you need to have it drafted even by your advocates, or any side can hire an advocate and the other side can also hire an advocate, and both the advocates can sit together and they can make the agreement of sale. Right, so that is something which is very important. That is about your agreement of sale. Now the agreement of sale problem would be shared to you via WhatsApp as a, okay, just let me see if I have the problem on my phone. Okay, yeah, I do. Okay. So draft an agreement to sell. So I'm just dictating out the question. Draft an agreement to sell with respect of the details given below. I will just be mentioning some details here and there, not everything. Um, Number one, that um, there is a seller. The seller's name is Mr. Sindhuri Ram. The buyer's name is Mr. James and Mrs. Stella James. Now, the property details, you can mention whatever you want. The total consideration of the particular property is to be rupees 3 crores. Now, the advance paid is supposed to be um, 1 crores. Uh, Not 1 crores, 70,000. Now, now the 70,000 advance is paid partially through check and partially through account transfer. Now, it needs to be an individual house because drafting of an agreement of sale for an apartment is a very complicated and lengthy process. I will be sending you a draft as well as uh, everything that you need by the end of the day or tomorrow morning at tops. Um, so, right, if anybody has any doubts,